I am so done with reincarnation. Like, I am done cycling back after this life. Hi, guys. It's me, Tony Faroni. Tony Mamoni. Tony Past Life Oni. Tony Egyptoni. How are you doing? So, today's video is going to be facts about ancient Egypt. So, let's jump right into this hot mess. Well, I don't know if ancient Egyptians wore glasses, but I have to for this one. So we're going to be reading from my new journal. I wrote down 25 facts about ancient Egypt. So, beer and bread was used as money, as currency. So, like we use coins and cash and online transactions today, they used beer and bread, meaning they was probably getting turned up the whole entire time, okay? And it's funny because they even made bread out of beer. So, yeah. The soldiers and the workers needed this as form of payment mostly, but there were a lot of others who also obviously were receiving those transactions, okay? But most everyone there were soldiers, workers, especially by the Nile. And you had to make your offerings to the gods with beer or bread as well, and your ancestors. So that's what they did. And the Nile River is what people relied on for their life, their sustainability. You know, back in the day, they were having to live by the rivers, you know, so that they could sustain and survive. And they relied on if it flooded or if it droughted, right? Like they wanted a happy medium in between. If it was flooded, flood their crops, they'd go hungry, right? And that meant the gods were pissed off, like the gods were angered, right? And if there was a drought, obviously same repercussion, right? So that means no money either. No money to really do anything. It's kind of like, how could everything flow if there's no food? People can't work, you know. There's no motive or reason to work, because back then they didn't have, like, you know, what we do now. And so what was your motivation to get up and work? There was none. You had to, right? You had to survive, right? Today we have to be like, oh my God, I have to have a reason to get out of bed. They didn't have that problem. They wish they had that problem. They had to work to survive, unless you were like a pharaoh, right? Which portrayed as, even though I look like a nun. Anyway, fact number 2. There was no doctor for all of your ailments. Like today, there you go to your doctor, they know everything from your head to toes and inside of you. No, there was a doctor like for the teeth. They weren't called dentists, okay? They weren't called dental practitioners. They were doctors of the tooth. So there were doctors to only specialize in one area of your life, one department, one field, right? So, yeah. You had to go to separate doctors for separate issues, basically. And everyone pretty much had, like, a healthcare plan, right? That's how it kind of worked out. So everyone got their needs taken care of and met when they needed to, because they knew they needed workers. And people mistook. So a lot of the pyramids were not built by slaves. They were actually paid workers. And some of them were temporary workers that came from other lands and territories. So, like, yeah, A lot of people thought like there were 100,000 slaves. No, there were up to like 5,000 workers, paid workers there. So they were civilized. They were a civilized people, you know. There's a lot of myth, you know. But yes, one doctor would pertain to only one body part as a specialty. So it wouldn't be like, you know, I'm going to fix your teeth and your headache. No, like, you got to go to a separate doctor for that brain thing that you're going through, right? Number 3, women had rights and freedoms. They could buy property, they could sell, I believe they could vote, they could, you know, they could, if they were married to their husbands, right? And they had a prenup where they could have a prenuptial agreement where they could agree that the woman would take over back what she has gained throughout the marriage rather than the male. So yeah, it was amazing for women. Although they were rarely women pharaohs at that time. So there were, I believe, only like 3 major pharaohs that were women. And one of them played a huge role. Like, she probably played more of a role than King Tut. Like, King Tutankhamun really wasn't a big deal. He was like a fart in space. Not discrediting him, but I think back in the early 1900s and myth and cinema really made him like this whole huge deal. He really wasn't. He was just such a small speck, and especially compared to like Cleopatra, you know, Mark Antony, all that stuff. Alexander the Great, like, he really was nothing. Like, it's just because they found his body in the tomb, they got all excited. Was it 1922 they found it? And they made it a huge deal. So yeah. But as a child, I always connected more to King Tut for some reason. Maybe that's just because of what everyone believed or taught me growing up about ancient Egypt. I used to always be connected, like past life, reading hieroglyphics, studying them, you know, playing games relating to ancient Egypt. Like, I always, as a kid, knew I had that connection within. Like, even my house today has, like, Egyptian decoration, you know. I don't know why, but I think my DNA even said at one point I was a little Egyptian. I was, like, weirded out by that because, like, I didn't see it coming. But then that's like, oh, you know, there's that connection, you know. But I don't know if that is 100% accurate today. So yeah, also they usually did not work outside of their home. So it's like they were work at home moms. Like, I was stunned to read that. You know. But I guess it makes sense because they did work and study a lot of mathematics and science and all that good stuff. So you don't need to go out of your house to do that, I guess. Or your hut, you know. Number 4, they had over 2,000 gods. Some claim 1,000 plus, whatever, close enough. Many gods. They believed in the afterlife. Absolutely. They definitely believe that once you go from this physical plane, there is so much more out there for you, you know. Some are like Isis, Bastet, Ra, the sun god, right? Osiris, Thoth. Number 5, pyramids were tombs for pharaohs. I think that's pretty straightforward. But there's other alleged information out there. And I'm not here claiming anything as factual based information. This is all entertainment purposes only, but you know, I like to do a little research, and obviously if you're drawn to something, there's some knowledge in your bones about your past as soul and flesh. So, as a curious person growing up and a critical thinker, I've come to the conclusion that there is perhaps probably another reason for building these giant stone beasts. And I'll leave it there. Number 6, cats were sacred. That's why you see them all the time in the hieroglyphics. Y'all go check out my I did an Egyptian pharaoh roleplay like long ago. Actually, I did 2 Egyptian themed videos. One was so long ago. That was like Egypt in the desert or something. I don't even remember at this point. It was like in 2012, 2013. That was my first green screen video too. And that was when ASMR artists first started to use green screens. The second was the pharaoh, where I had the Anubis mask and this outfit, which I'm bringing back. So yeah, this has hieroglyphics on it. So yeah, you often see like the all-seeing eye, the eye of Horus, the eye of Ra, whatever it's called. There's 2 different eyes, right? One it represents the left, one represents the right. The masculine, feminine, you know, the all-seeing, the intellect. It's getting hot in here. I don't know if it's because I'm in the desert, honey. The deserts of Florida, Babylon, Florida. Or it's because of this outfit that's probably going to catch on fire if I stand too close to a burning candle. I also am waiting to do a Cleopatra roleplay. Be on the lookout for that. So yeah, since I seem to look like a woman more when I wear makeup. Cats were sacred and thought to deliver good luck, which is why many people had them as pets in their home. But they were related to the goddess of Bastet, which is the cat god. This is Bastet. Bastet. And you could see the necklace here of the scarab beetle that always drew me into as a kid. And I always have these like beetles that look like the scarab beetle, like these green big beetles that come to my front door at night. And I'm like, that's my ancestors, okay? They're coming through. They're coming through. Reminded me who I really am. We're so much more than just these bodies, you know, if you really think about it. But that's another point, another time, another tale. They were also mummified and buried as well. So that's why you see those tombs with those bandaged up cats. Because mummies really look just like a bunch of band-aids, which they are. They're basically bandages. And I'll get into that soon. But fact number 7, darling. Men and women wore makeup, and that's why I wore mine the way it is. Let me show you again if you did not notice. The eyes were always green or black. Okay, well, I have one eye to represent that one eye. And they deemed, I suppose, or they allege, makeup was used as protection from the sun. You can imagine Egypt's sun is brutal. And also perhaps provided magical healing. Both sexes wore perfumes as well, very fragmented floral scents. And they had red paint and henna to color their lips. So that's why mine are more red. So I can imagine this is what they must have looked like. Maybe even a bit more tan, because, I mean, I'm tan, but, like, this lighting doesn't make me look that tan. So, I mean, this is my true color. Like, let me show you. Because sometimes the face, you know, I use that sunscreen because I don't want to age in, like, 20 minutes. And then I wear a hat and sunglasses, so you can't tell. Honey, I am dark, honey. Okay? And I'm having makeup now, obviously, so you can't tell. Even this doesn't do. If I turn off the light, you're gonna see like my okay. You can see my leg too, like my bad. Okay. And that is because of the sun, but I've always been naturally a bit more darker. Even than my brother. It's weird. Like, he's pale, like he's pasty, like he reds, burns in the sun. I don't ever. Like, as a child, even I'm dark. Like, it's so weird. My genealogy is like, I have more of the, whatchamacallit, Mediterranean, southeastern part of Europe, even into Asia, than, perhaps my brother does, okay? So yeah. But yeah, men and women wore makeup. When people judge me for wearing makeup when I first started videos, I always told them, you know, they've been wearing, even in ancient China, for thousands of years, right? Like, they weren't judged. So I think there's a lot more weirder stuff going on in today's world than a man wearing makeup, I'm just saying. But being one of the first men to wear makeup on YouTube, I got called out a lot. Number 8, one of the first to invent writing. Okay, I'm sure they're not the first, but maybe, because ancient Egypt goes way back. Like, people think ancient Egypt is like only 2,000 years. Honey, they've been like almost 3,000 BC. Cleopatra was born closer to our time than to the building of the Great Pyramids. You know that, right? Like, she's modern. She's modern day. She was like 60 something BC. That ain't far from now. That's closer to now than that time. So that's how far back Egypt goes. So yeah, she was basically one of the last remnants, perhaps. But one of the first to invent writing, and they used ink and they used paper, which they call papyrus. Number 9, they were scientists and mathematicians, so very smart people. They invented medicine, cosmetics, the calendar. They used 3 calendars, I believe, the lunar, the solar, and I don't know if it's Gregorian or I forgot, but one was for basically farming, to figure out, like a farmer's almanac, when was the right appropriate time to crop, yield, etc., produce, harvest. Another was to deem like the days and how they were going to dictate, That's how they always did. Like, they used the moon, the sun. It's no surprise. But they also believed the earth was flat too. So, and they also believed that the Nile River ran through the center of it. So that's like the center that gave them everything they needed, right? They invented the plow for farming, musical instruments, toothpaste even, which was like pepper, rock salt, and some flour combination. And even ways to build buildings. And they were amazing at that, with their structures lasting so long. Number 10. I can't stop, because it's a mix of lip gloss and it's so smooth. By preserving a body through mummification, the soul would live on in the afterlife for eternity. That was their belief. And they would never remove the heart, because they believed that you would need your heart in the afterlife. And it would remove your brain through the nostril. I know, nasty. And everything else they'd remove except your heart. And they went through this whole process to mummify you. It's crazy. And preserve your body. Like, they were very good at long-term stuff. Like, building pyramids that lasted forever. Bodies that lasted forever. Oh, it's crazy, right? Number 11. The scarab beetle, which I just mentioned earlier, was sacred, and it symbolized life after death and resurrection. Number 12, to date, more than 130 pyramids were discovered in Egypt. I'm sure there's more. Number 13, and even around the world, there's way more. Hieroglyphics never had vowels, so we will never know how they pronounced their words. But I think someone recently in the last few years did interpret what it may have sounded like, and I thought it was pretty unique, to say the least. Number 14, they kept pets like hawks, dogs. And everyone always says he looks like Anubis, so there you go. He totally looks like an Egyptian dog, just saying. Ibises, lions, baboons, and monkeys. So not just cats. I guess anything they found in the wild and that they could perhaps domesticate. Number 15, King Tut wore sandals, and in his sandals, his enemies were painted on them. So he would basically, it'd be as if he would trample on them at all times, like trample over his enemies. That's why he had them painted on his sandals. I thought that was badass. Like, that's my favorite fact. Number 15, the fact that That's more badass than Bruce Lee than Cleopatra combined. Like iconic, okay? And that's why I love me some King Toot, okay? And it makes me realize, like, I was always the best at science and math, science and mathematics. And that explains probably why, like that past life connection, right? If they were always into science and math, it only makes sense why I'd have the brains for it, right? Well, for the most part. Not chemistry, honey. They must have not been doing chemistry, because, honey, chemistry, no. No can do. Sorry. Lo siento. Wait, that's Spanish. That's not Egyptian. What does Egyptian sound like? Oh, now I'm going to look that up again. Like, maybe there's AI generated Egyptian. No, I'm not going to look that up. I'm not going to feed the beast. Okay. Okay. And for the most part, these were all the facts that I could really find, because, like, every other article or so only repeated the same information. And I'm like, I'm not really finding any more facts than I already either know or just have researched. So yeah, this is pretty much it. I know there's more, but you really have to dive deep and go in that memory bank to find them. And not all of it can be really truth or what is deemed today factual. Number 16, the Great Pyramid of Giza has 2,300,000 stone blocks. And have you seen how big these blocks are? Like, they're not blocks, like little bricks that you carry in your hand. Honey, no. These are blocks. Okay. Number 17, a pharaoh's hair was never to be seen. I'm so dramatic. I'm sorry. I'm feeling myself in this, okay? Like, and they'd always wear a crown or headdress. Number 18, Cleopatra studied math, philosophy, astronomy. I find her so fascinating. Like, I mean, don't we all, right? And she spoke at least 12 languages. She was a master linguist, okay? She was on top of her game. That's why she'd be with Mark Anthony and doing all this stuff, right? I mean, she once even got kicked out of her kingdom, and then she came back even more powerful. Like, how you gonna do that if you're not a master linguist? Number 19, many rulers were unhealthy and overweight due to their consistent diet of meat, beer, wine, bread, and honey. Honey, I don't blame them, okay? If I was a pharaoh, if they ruled me, I'd be like, no, I'm not working out. You're going to come to me and feed me all that, okay? Who wants to just sit there and eat grapes all day? Nah, give me the meat. Give me the bread. They lived short, but they lived, you know. Number 20, King Tut may have been killed by a hippopotamus, believe it or not. A dang hippo. And that's why I connect to him so much, because in a past life, I was killed by this bobcat-looking creature in the wilderness. While I was hunting, too. And this was while he was hunting, too. So, crazy. His body was embalmed without his heart and his chest. And remember what I said about the heart. You do not go in the afterlife without your heart. So why would the heart be missing? So yeah. Hippos were big. They're big, right? So if they bite you, yeah, I'm sure they ripped out his chest. And they were tiny people, apparently. Like, you see the mummies, like, they're small. They were tiny people. So I have no doubt that the hippo could have done that. That's a good allegedly. Number 21, the bandages of a mummy can stretch out for 1 mile when you unwrap them. That's a lot of bandages. Number 22. I mean, they wrapped them up good. They want to make sure they could never leave. Servants were smeared with honey. This one is sad. They were smeared with honey to keep flies away from Pharaoh. Wow. That's sad. Number 23. Most people lived by the Nile River for obviously water, food, and transportation. Obviously, there were no cars. I mean, there were those like wheel chariots, weren't they? But I'm sure only the bourgeois could transport on those. Imagine like a slave or servant got caught like sneaking onto like Cleopatra's chariot. Like she probably pushed him off. Number 24, they played board games too. One was called Senet, which is similar to chess today. Another was an early version of dice. Number 25, and this is the last fact, some bathed in sour milk in belief that it would help their skin. And I believe Cleopatra, Miss Cleo herself, bathed in goat's milk every day. Like they'd pour out like tons of goat milk, like every day, new fresh goat milk for her bougie butt to just be sitting up in there. I wonder how that's serving her in the afterlife. Or did she reincarnate? We'll never know. Oh, that looks kind of like dog ears. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this silly video, and I will see you next time. And if you enjoyed the facts, make sure you tap the subscribe, hit all notifications, and check my website, TonyBomboni.com, to be booking your own services from me. Can't wait to see you there. Bye-bye.